6 o'clock on Friday, the 6th of December, 2019. Good evening and thank you for tuning in to the English edition of Ora News. My name is Oliver, bringing you the only daily update of the local Albanian news translated into English. Making headlines tonight, greenhouses are replacing homes. This is the reality for many families in Thumana, like dozens of others over the past 11 days, who are installing plastic tarps on their homes instead of actual roofs. The family says the shelter that was offered to them after the earthquake was given to the people who need it the most. They are now waiting to receive a winter tent for protection. Many houses display a yellow cross in their entry doorways, which indicates danger and require expert evaluation. Many residents even fear potential robberies. In one demolished dwelling, there used to live 6 individuals, and this scenario is in no way unique. There are thousands of other such cases all in all. Residents initially took refuge in the camp located in Fushkruya, but they say that the inhabitants of the rural areas were not admitted to hotels as promised, but were rather forced to return to their plastic tents. Now, the remains of any high-rise buildings that were left after destruction are now being removed. But the tragedy and destruction left behind seems likely to haunt these residents for months to come, prompting them to all leave the cities they once called home. Next up, the threat posed by the November 26 earthquake to Skanderbeg's castle in Kroya has left many leaders uneasy about the possible consequences to come, including President Ilir Meta. To inspect the damages to the bell tower and the Bektashi temple, the head of state has made sure to have these 2 monuments verified for safety, even allowing authorities to cross the security perimeter. I visited today the castle of Kroya, the jewel of our national heritage. It was damaged by the devastating earthquake on November 26, especially the bell tower and the temple, 2 of the most unique and very important monuments of the castle. They have suffered very severe damage, and we need to take immediate measures in order to repair and protect it for the strong cultural and national symbolism they represent. These inspections should be carried out with the utmost responsibility all the way to the end, said Meta. Ilir Meta urged institutions to cooperate in order to help out-of-state citizens due to the destruction of their homes. Meanwhile, the president has not forgotten the previously announced march predicated on the protection of the Constitution, but will have to postpone it until after December 8th. Concrete efforts should continue in order to improve the coordination of all institutions with the local government and affected communities to achieve the most optimal solution as soon as possible. The president has always defended the Constitution, but now is the time to take action. The country must be brought back to normal as soon as possible, and this will happen when all of the affected residents return to their normal lives as it was before November 26, declared the president. President Meta also paid a visit to the homes of several families in the Hasane village of Kroya, where it was badly damaged by the November 26th earthquake. And moving on, according to officials, buildings in Albania have not been built according to strict standards in terms of the technical conditions regarding seismic activities. Arben Dervishaj, General Secretary of the Builders Association, points out that many seismic maps are outdated in Albania, and European standards or Eurocodes are only used by some architects as they have higher costs. There was a duality between usage. Only some of the construction workers with their own initiative and in cooperation with the investor have used the Eurocodes for the infrastructure, and these facilities do not have any kind of damage. Another part of this situation has to do with the Albanian Eurocodes, said Dervishaj. They have called for the strengthening of legislation in the field of construction, but we need to strengthen it even more. Designer, implementer, supervisor, examiner links, in addition to the local government that certifies it all, did not work properly, he said. Dervishaj also raises the problem of malfunctioning in the design chain and local government chain. Builders also want to review the timing and managing of licensing for architects. Getting a license doesn't mean that this is a permanent title. On top of a 5-year period, you have to testify before the committees to prove that you have studied and/or have published articles, or else you will undergo the exam, said Dervishaj. Strengthening government penalties for all non-law-abiding engineers or designers under the Builders Association does not essentially solve the problems facing the construction sector. The November 26 earthquake has created a situation of concern for the safety of educational institutions. In the Elbasan municipality, 90% of schools do not even have an emergency staircase. In this situation, teachers have simply instructed the students how to respond in the case of seismic danger, The directors of the schools voiced their concerns along with students and their parents at the recent municipal council meeting. After the September 21st earthquake, the affected municipalities promised to verify the conditions of the schools. But when more than 2 months had passed and the November earthquake toppled 28 schools, teachers now demand the official results from the government so as to appease their students and parents. To provide teachers with solutions to the problems raised, the mayor of Elbasan says he will seek government funding as most schools are old and emergency measures are not always available. Seismic shocks in late November caused damage to many public institutions. The problems did not spare the premises of the Prime Ministry building or the Assembly. The Regional Tax Directorate building was not damaged by the November earthquake, but damages elsewhere have left visible marks on the walls. And as these photos show, the biggest problems have occurred inside the building itself. According to the Verification Act of the Construction Institute dated on December 4th, the building has suffered no damage to its structure, but only to the refineries. Problems with the durability of the structure have also appeared in the elevator. The Institute of Construction recommends repairing damaged walls as they can be a source of ancillary accidents. Employees were also informed about the situation, some of whom were displaced from the building in which they operated prior to the November earthquake. Well, the day after he was sworn in by the Assembly, Prosecutor General Osian Chella took over the office of the Prosecutor General as he showed up in the building at 9 a.m., while his predecessor, Arta Marcu, appeared earlier. In attendance at the presentation was also the Secretary of the Assembly, Gens Jonshai, and the head of the High Council of Prosecution, Gent Ibrahimi. In her introductory speech, Arta Marcu praised the work of the Prosecutor General and congratulated her successor on the success of the general prosecution. The newly appointed Chief Prosecutor has focused on the most delicate issues already affecting the justice system, where investigating the consequences of the earthquake will undoubtedly remain a priority. In the end, the ceremony ended with an in-depth meeting between Marcu and Chella, while former interim prosecutor Arta Marcu was escorted away, leaving the building of the prosecution by taxi. A record number of complaints by citizens are being directly addressed to Albania's road police and law enforcement, while the Internal Affairs and Complaint Service is also considering complaints about the Republican Guard and the Fire Service. Citizens complain about the administrative measures taken by the traffic police, but also about the procedures followed by law enforcement officers in dealing with various conflicts. Other violations are being reported at border crossings, and police involvement in cases pertaining to cannabis cultivation remain a concern. In addition, many police chiefs are also under investigation for allegedly helping cannabis growers. During the 11 months of this year, citizens have submitted more than 500 complaints to the Tirana Police, 117 to Durrës Police, and 95 to Shkodrës Police. Following the complaints, some officers have been temporarily suspended and are awaiting a decision by the Internal Affairs and Complaint Service to reinstate them or send them to the prosecution. According to official data of the Internal Affairs and Complaint Service, from January until present, 34 officers have been arrested, 10 more have been processed, and 8 have been suspended from duty. As for cannabis cultivation, more than 53 police officers were prosecuted, arrested, and sent to the prosecution during the same time period. And finally tonight, Albania officially takes over the OSCE leadership for 2020. From Bratislava, the Prime Minister Edi Rama called it a historic step for the country. Despite the challenges, Rama is confident that the OSCE under the leadership of Albania will be successful and based on dialogue, democracy, and human rights. For Albania, it is a milestone. Our vision for the OSCE leadership will be based on 3 pillars. The first on fundamental human rights issues such as credibility, security, territorial integrity, and peace in Europe. The second has to do with the defense of democracy and the work of the OSCE, which will be closely linked to the people. The third pillar will be based on dialogue, as there is still a need to build trust between countries, said Rama. After the conclusion of the roundtable, the Prime Minister, in the company of his Albanian counterpart, stressed what responsibilities they are prepared to take on. Albania's 2020 budget allocation for the OSCE leadership is valued at $4 million, a figure that the socialists themselves cannot even explain. And that's the news across the country today. Thank you so much for watching our English edition this evening, and be sure to join us again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of Ora News, thank you and have a good night.